afternoon and welcome to Teleislas News, the most important news of the day. Inhabitants from the barrack sector made a terrible finding, the lifeless body of a fisherman who was also a member of that community.
In the morning, inhabitants of the barrack sector report to the National Police the finding of a 42-year-old male body identified as Marco Antonio Howard Hooker. During the inspection, it was evident that this person was killed by a firearm.
An event that is to be regretted is the finding of a lifeless person inside a house who has been shot with a firearm at the level of his head. And of course, we are carrying out all the neighborhood activities as it corresponds, like collecting cameras and elements that are material evidence in order to allow us with the appropriate personnel and experts that we have here on the island to clarify in record time this case that concerns us a lot.
Inhabitants of the sector indicated to Teleislas News they did not hear any bullet that went off. For this reason, the National Police invite the citizenship to deliver any important information for the clarification of this event.
The National Police gave a balance on the events that occurred last weekend where there were acts of intolerance in the south of the island.
There were some violent events during the weekend. We have 2 homicides that were caused by intolerance. The first homicide was on Saturday in the sector of Brooks Hill, where a person inside a house kills his cousin simply for the possession of a rooster, and likewise also causes injuries to another cousin who tries to interfere in the discussion that they held. The second case of intolerance was on Sunday around 10 o'clock at night in the Rancho sector, where 2 people on a motorcycle began to have a fight over differences, which we have established with intelligence and criminal investigation personnel that it was a crime of passion because the deceased had a restriction on a 17-year-old minor, and it seems that there is a situation from that order. The GOES staff who over the weekend achieved the capture of alias McGregory. This offender was stealing in the mangrove sector. He used to present himself as a person who offered tourist information, then take advantage and steal all their items, and even did so in an intimidating way with a firearm. It is important to highlight the seizure of 173 grams of marijuana that took place over the weekend at the airport. This allows us to continue presenting positive reports in differential matters that the National Police in the department has been doing. Of course, we must highlight the capture of a person who had a court order for sexual harassment warning, and this is the product of the controls that we continue to do with background checks throughout the island. And thanks to this, we are presenting this positive balance in terms of results.
For several days, the island have been center of strong winds and some drizzles. The maritime authorities recommended extreme safety measures for activities at sea.
The port captaincy reported a low-pressure system that has been developing in the Caribbean Sea, which is causing strong winds in the archipielago. The port captain expanded on this information.
Hoy se están presentando unas condiciones meteomarinas fuertes.
Today we are experiencing strong meteomarine conditions due to the influence of the trade winds and driven by a strong pressure in the Atlantic Sea and a low pressure center in the Caribbean Sea. This is generating winds between 25 and 33 knots and a swell height between 2.5 and 4 meters high. It is necessary to take extreme safety measures in navigation and for maritime activities in San Andres. There are some authorized water sports activities which are kite surfing, parasailing with a yellow art, kite surfing for experts, also diving near the shore.
The port captain also mentioned that the Rose Key and Johnny Key are closed and that the current atmospheric conditions will continue during the next 16 hours until they normalize completely.
Pay much attention to the following note. From today, it is forbidden to consume, capture, and commercialize spiny lobster in the department, a measure that is adopted for the sake of its reproduction.
Today begins the closed season for the spiny lobster, which is recognized and highly consumed product in our department. And for this reason, in order to protect and conserve the species, the Secretariat of Agriculture and Fisheries established a restriction that runs from March 1st to June 30. The importance of this restriction was emphasized by Anthony Rojas, Archibald Coordinator of the fishing area.
Looking to preserve and to control the catch of the the lobster. And this closed season is support with the studies that many institutions are already doing in past years, where we established that during this season is where the lobster is reproducing. So we try to guarantee or try to permit that the lobster can reproduce at least one time in our life, because if we guarantee that, at least we can sustain the fisheries, that we can know that we fishermen will have fish for in the short terms rather than long terms. Again, inviting to fulfill this requirement. Remember that the violation of the fishing laws.
It is also important for the community to keep in mind that non-compliance with this restriction is cause for a significant sanction.
You have an administrative one that it can go maybe a right increasing that we can tell you that you violate the law, or it can go up to a sanction that can go from 1 to 100,000 salarios diarios legales vigentes. Having in account the law 1851, and that include the sanction, the penal sanction, so you can carry in front of a judge.
The invitation then is to refrain from capturing, commercializing, or consuming the spiny lobster from March 1st till June 30.
And the Secretary of Tourism gave a report of how many tourists visited the island during the month of February. Here is the note.
Thanks to the visits to virtual tourism fairs and the people who have chosen the islands as their preferred destination, contributing to its reactivation, the month of February closed with a figure of 52,000 visitors. Sebastián Ospina, Archibald Secretary of Tourism, expanded on this information.
In the month of February, we received a total of 52,000 tourists in the department, a very surprising figure. Frankly, as a government, we did not expect a figure similar to that of January, where there were 58,000 people, which makes us very happy.
The Secretary mentioned some of the strategies that have been implemented for the reactivation of the islands.
The virtual fairs have been a success. During the pandemic, we took advantage of these virtual spaces to extend invitations. Likewise, the meetings we had with the airlines and different agencies, telling them not to forget us as a preferred destination, that we are ready and willing to receive tourists.
The Secretary concluded by saying that they will continue working so that the reactivation becomes more and more reality, always taking into account the biosecurity measures required by law.
And the Ministry of Health released a new resolution which eliminates some security protocols against COVID-19 as they claim not to be effective against the spread of the virus.
Hello, Lisa and all the TV viewers. Well, yes, is the resolution 0223 that eliminates different protocols of biosecurity that are going to help us or not against COVID-19. The Ministry of Health announced that the takeoff temperature and also the disinfection mat that they put in every establishment, public establishment, are not necessary right now. We talked to the tourism to tell us about what they think about these new measurements and if they think if these are effective or not.
So far, what I have heard is that it is not necessary because there are other more effective measures such as hand washing and social distancing. But it seems to me that it is also important to take into account the investment that the shopping malls had to obtain the security items. Maybe the mats, but I think it is important to take a temperature because that is what shows if you have a fever or not. But I don't think the mat is that useful.
I think it is good because in reality it has not been very useful. According to studies, the mouth cover and hand washing is the most important thing, so I think it is good.
Very good, because the use of the mat and taking of temperature was not very functional, since you can have the virus and not detect it immediately.
It's very important to note also that if the ministry still take these protocols, we have to still follow different ones that are very effective against COVID-19. That is the use of the mask, the social distancing, and also washing our hands constantly. This is all the information we report from here, from the town of the island. Continue, Lisa, in the studio.
And now let's get to know other facts that are making news in our brief news sections of today.
The National Police of the Archipelago Department, through its Prevention and Citizen Education Group, carried out activities to promote and disseminate the hotline for women victims of violence 155 in the New Guinea sector. This with the aim of encouraging citizens to report, and also the route care line in cases such as these, through a door-to-door visit and chats to women by the authority seeking the reduction of this crime. The Corporation for the Sustainable Development of the Archipelago San Andres, in the framework of Operation Black Crab, carried out cleaning activities and collection of red mangrove seedlings in the sector of San Juan in Old Providence. The work was developed by families linked to the incentive program for the conservation of marine and coastal ecosystems, and this work seeks to restore environmental balance to the municipality affected after the passage of Hurricane Iota. The PRASS strategy continues to be deployed throughout the department, where EPS, Sanitas, and Nueva EPS work together in the detection of COVID-19 virus. This week, the detection test will be carried out in the Perry Hill sector, where officials will visit house to house to carry out the test.
Now we continue with the weather forecast. The weather forecast for today, 1st of March, in the coastal area of the archipelago, the sky is partly cloudy, temperature is 28 degrees Celsius, with winds from the northeast direction with intensities of 27 km per hour. Humidity forecast is 67% and probability of precipitation is 6%.